Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Daily Wonder Parent Education Series. So you can tune in every Wednesday at this time, and Rebecca and I discuss all kinds of different topics around our Daily Wonder curriculum and parent topics of interest that come up throughout the year. So I am Jennifer. Rebecca is above me there. And we are the content writers for Daily Wonder. And today our topic is Daily Wonder's approach to science. So, Daily Wonder in general is all about the wonder and how to bring and engage that wonder and curiosity in your child. And that means that we don't just feed them ready-made concepts and theories that have already been figured out. We want your children to engage in the process of wondering and pondering and exploring and experimenting and being curious and coming to these realizations through experience. So this approach to science is phenomenological, and Rebecca's going to explain more specific details about this kind of science, the scientific approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this idea of phenomenological just means absorbing into something. So I'm going to start with the demo.
Awesome.
So this demo is something you're going to observe with your ears. So I'm going to make some sounds, and I want you to just observe with your ears those sounds. Sound number 1. Sound number 2. Sound number 3. Okay, so you heard a few different sounds. Now I'll show you some items that those sounds came from my kitchen. So you can guess the materials that you see before you. And I'll make those sounds again. Here's sound number 1 again. And sound number 2 again. Sound number 3. Jen, my number 1 student, what did you observe?
Okay, I'm going to have a disclaimer first that without being in the room, the sounds are not as clear as they
I guess
would be.
so, yes.
So what did I hear with my ears?
Mm-hmm.
I heard a third sound that was very obviously metal of some sort. It had a brightness to it. It was tingy and very distinctly different than the other two.
Yeah.
And then I think I heard the first sound being a bit more muted and flat, which made me think it was the plastic sound. Mm-hmm. And then the second sound felt a bit warmer, and I thought that it would be the wood.
Right. So what did Jen do? She perceived something through her sense organ, her ears. And she took those perceptions and she combined them with other perceptions in her past. Some knowledge about wood, some knowledge about plastics or silicones, some knowledge about metals. And she developed a relationship between her sense impressions she took in this moment and her sense impressions from the past. And she arrived at some knowledge. She arrived at a concept. I did not start by saying, Jen, did you know that sounds have different sources? Jen, did you know that we can group sources based on sound? I didn't say that. I didn't deliver to you the concept first and then demo something just to prove it. You had this experience of doing all the work of thinking. You started with observing and wondering and contemplating. You expressed feeling for each of those sounds. I think I heard you say about the wood that it was warm. That's a feeling word in a sense. And then you said a tinkly sound for the metal. That's kind of a feeling word. So this is sort of a demo of the phenomenological approach of having the sense experience and doing the work of thinking rather than having the thought given to you and then we just go about proving it. And so, of course, the young child needs an environment that is rich in sensory impressions, rich in context. And what I mean by that is, well, I want to use an example. I was reading an article about phenomenological approach, and there was this excellent example in there about this story of this parent who was at a grocery store, a big grocery store, made me think of Costco or something like that, with all the big lights and all the sound, and they had their toddler with them who was being a bit restless, and they were in the lineup to go, and there was a wooden puzzle there of a sheep, and the sheep was in several pieces of puzzle with those little pegs on them, and the mom, it was a mom in this case, was desperate to have this toddler focus on something, and she said, "Look, a sheep." And the author of this article said, "Now, is that really a sheep? Like, how can a child understand what really is sheepness?" And compare that experience of being in the lineup at Costco and seeing this flat wooden cold puzzle compared to going to a farm and taking in the smells and seeing the hay and the sheep's woolly coat and the smell of the sheep and the sweet little face of the sheep and the sticks and the cruddy stuff in the woolly coat of the sheep. And that's what we're really looking for, to give children this experience of wondering at what exists in these sensory experiences and in this context of the reality of things, so that they begin to understand what it means to be a human and to understand all these scientific concepts along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about how Daily Wonder does this.
Right. So one of the things that, if you've been following us, you would know is that Daily Wonder has a very methodically, purposeful, slow approach to building these core subjects that has been shown in our literacy, our numeracy, and it's in our science as well. So in the younger grades, science is nature, science is everywhere around us. So often it's happening organically in your day when your child says, "How come such and such?" or "Why is that the way it is?" It's keeping this sense of wonder open. I wonder why, or let's go see, or let's try this, or why don't you play with that? So there's a lot of hands-on natural scientific exploration in the younger years. When we reach grade 4, that's the first official science block, and that's zoology. Children, are so connected to animals, and it's just so easily like the perfect intro to science. It's the beginning of understanding classification and research projects and all these things. And it's so they're getting the experience of learning about a creature that walks upon the earth. And then there's this this purposeful movement with science where we move from zoology, where animals are walking on the earth, to grade 5 with this big theme of botany throughout the year, with plants that grow up from the earth. And it gets more scientific in its processes. And then we move to grade 6, geology, which is minerals that are found within the earth. And in grade 6, there's this polarity of the child developmentally. So we've got this kind of weighted, puberty-ridden, like sort of lanky and bony and weighted down on the earth by gravity. So geology is a really appropriate way to sort of connect with the minerals and the bones and the weight of the earth. But at the same time, we want our children to also just be aware of the expansiveness of the world and of the universe, and to be in awe when they're feeling jaded and kind of inward in this puberty stage, to encourage them to look outwards and be filled with wonder. Astronomy comes as well during that year. Physics comes in grade 6 as well. And maybe Rebecca will speak a bit to physics comes in grade 6. Physics comes again in grade 7, along with chemistry and physiology. So that's our kind of layout of science in Daily Wonder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the grade 6 physics is focused on acoustics, optics, color, magnetism, electricity, if I'm remembering the list. Yeah. And in grade 7, it focuses more on the mechanics side of things.
And lots of hands-on experiments.
Oh yeah.
Learning
Yeah.
how to do your diagrams and how to summarize and explain what you've just observed
Exactly.
in your own.
Lots of observation of demos, just like we had all of you do right now with those sounds, that type of thing. Taking it, learning how to observe, and learning how to think through, starting with the senses, and learning how to do that, and then kind of mindfully writing down what you've learned from that experience,
Mhm.
and you know, and then visualizing what you saw and putting it into the portfolio in an image.
Right.
Yeah,
So then
it's
at
really
the very end, you end up with this scientific concept that was
Mhm.
built from your observation, your discussion around it, your inquiry and questions and play with the objects
Mhm.
to the point where you get this finished piece, this finished concept, which is quite different than a teacher walking up to the front of the room and saying,
Exactly. Yeah.
well, I can't think of a particular
Yeah.
concept right now, but like some physical,
Yeah.
physics concept in electricity and magnetism, and then,
Right.
well, then you already know it, and it actually didn't mean, if you're not a really scientific mind, which I was not as a child, that just goes right over my head. I'm already bored. I don't know why it matters to me,
Yeah.
and I frankly don't care. And so then they've already lost me. But if
Yeah.
you start with bringing out the materials and engaging the children in full-bodied experience, and then the art of it and the play of it, then I can come to the concept, and then wow, it makes so much sense to me. But otherwise,
That's right.
you've lost me.
Yeah. Like, let's watch this thing happen. And what are we looking at? Like all the wonder and the engagement that happens with that
Mhm.
is such a beautiful approach. And in the really younger years, you just leave it at this wondering.
Mhm.
And the approach to the end concept is very subtle. But
Right.
over the years, through the higher, as you get higher in the grades, you start to give these engaging questions that they can contemplate post observation. Like, what did
Mhm.
we see? How did it work? What were the steps? What was
Yeah.
the procedure? And how is this applicable to real life?
Mhm.
And those kinds of questions come out as you head towards grade 7, right?
Right. And it's so age appropriate because the children are awakened and they're standing on the earth and they're taking things in a new way. So we're asking them to verbatim, give us realistic, like tell us about a situation that's in reality, and
Right.
to really speak it back and speak this truth, this overarching objective truth.
That's right.
Because in that stage, children are very still emotional and subjective in their opinions of everything. It's like, you're always that way. You say to your mom, you never let me do this.
Yeah.
So as a parent, you're like, oh, okay, there they go flowing around. But in science, you're always coming to this objective truth, which is exercising this new faculty.
Yeah, exactly. And they say, that every single empirical body of evidence, every scientific study always starts with the sensory impression. So even in the journals of Da Vinci and Galileo and Kepler and these famous philosophers and scientists, they all started with an observation where they perceived something with their senses.
Mm-hmm.
They wrestled with it and built relationships between past perceptions. And then they said, well, wait a second, there's something new I've discovered here, or I have a new question. And that's what ends up being some great discovery, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we know that with science and philosophy, it's that spark of something new, this new question, this new burning wonder, curiosity that
Exactly.
is the first step that propels you forward.
Yes. So that's how we do.
That's how we do science. Maybe we want to add one more detail about if a science block is not happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we are in the midst of preparing for all the grades a document that shows which of our units contain science focus, or it can be a secondary focus, and which of our units do not have a science concept in them, but ways that you can bring more science into your life if you're kind of a sciencey family, or your relationship to your school provider requires that you cover science. So this will be a helpful document to kind of help you feel that we're covering science, but also if you're really wanting to engage, we've given you some age appropriate ideas.
Right. Because just for those that don't realize Daily Wonders approach, we would take a science topic like physics in grade 6 and spend 1 unit, which is 3 weeks of guided curriculum plus 1 week of independent projects. So we would spend 3 to 4 weeks immersed in that topic and then move on to another subject. And if science doesn't come up in that other month, you can use this document to choose other science experiments and concepts to follow and practice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good thinking to add that on, Jen.
Well, I think that's Daily Wonders Science
That's
talk for
it.
today.
Yeah. And so join us next week, same time, same place, same heads here, and we'll talk about social studies and Daily Wonders approach.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye for now.